Hello and welcome to this PLSA webinar on engaging, educating and advising scheme members. So to start, I'll tell you a little bit about the LV Corporate Solutions business. So LV have been providing occupational pension schemes with financial advice and guidance for retiring scheme members. This is supported by member engagement tools and financial education programs. Personally, I've worked for LV for over 20 years and I've got experience of working with trustees, sponsors and pension schemes to deliver effective education, guidance and advice services, as well as flexible retirement option exercises for members approaching or at retirement. Today, we're delighted to join forces with the PLSA to speak to you about engaging, educating and advising your scheme members, as well as the role that you can play in creating an effective pathway to good member outcomes, as well as managing risk. Firstly, I'd like to look at some of the consumer attitudes to pensions. And as you can see, we've put into the slide some recent media examples for you. A major benefit of the 2014 budget changes that it's made pensions much more interesting. When I used to tell people that I worked in pensions, it was a conversation stopper. And now you find that people are much more engaged in that subject. As well as pension freedom and choice, auto-enrolment has meant that more people than ever are building up their pension funds, and that the new increased access means that people will feel they have access to and can benefit from a major cash asset that was previously unavailable to them. So the good news is that the spark is now there, but we as an industry, a nation and businesses will now need to kindle that into flames of genuine interest that will provoke action. However, this is easier said than done. At LV, we as well as many other industry experts have increasingly been talking about member demand for greater support and the growing importance of the role that trustees and employers have to play in providing this. It was great to explore this with many of you in the session that we delivered alongside Carolyn Saunders from Pinsent Masons at the recent PLSA conference. I would urge you, if you haven't already seen it, to read Carolyn's paper on the subject. And hopefully we have convinced you, or are certainly on the road to convincing you, to look at the support that you're providing to scheme members. Once you've reached the decision that you want to make guidance, materials or advice services available, a major step has been taken. But this doesn't automatically mean that the outcomes or even the actions of the individuals will change. An unengaged individual, whatever their circumstances, is unlikely to become engaged without effective intervention. Someone who wants to look into the issue of their pensions won't necessarily know where to go to get information. And even if they do find it, will they understand it? Will they be motivated to take advice, or even be discouraged from doing anything at all? Finally, once a member's decided they want to get advice, will they know where to go or who to trust and how suitable that process is? Will they also know what product choices are available and the areas of expertise that the advisor or the advice service will need? At LV, we're advocates of the advice process and also of engaging, educating and advising methodology to ensure that the right support is in place at each stage of the retirement journey, and that members get the outcomes that are most appropriate for them. So in the next 30 minutes, we'll be taking a look at each of those stages in order, discussing the barriers and exploring practical steps trustees and employers can take to create an effective retirement journey, achieving better outcomes for the member and at the same time helping them. If we start by considering how engaged the scheme members are within your own schemes, and then we can tie that alongside some research that we've put in place, it's definitely fair to say that since pension freedoms came in, it's no longer that boring topic of conversation. People are waking up to the importance of pensions and are recognising that this is at the end of the period, their own money, and it's important that they make the right decisions. It's clear that there's a way to go to truly engage members. And at LV, every year we release a report called the State of Retirement Report, which is now in its 10th year. And this report looks at consumers' attitudes to retirement and some of the important issues that they raise. And from this, you'll see on the slide, from this, it's clear that 6 out of 10 consumers approaching age 55 don't know how much money they've put aside for their retirement. This research was recently supported by the findings of the FCA's Retirement Outcome Review, which looked at how the retirement income market has evolved since the pension freedoms were introduced in April of 2015. It focused particularly on consumers who do not take advice. The review revealed that consumers who withdrew their pots did so partly because they didn't trust pensions, and that this mistrust was typically based on negative media coverage and the broader pensions sector, including DB schemes. The review also found that the most consumers choose the path of least resistance, accepting the drawdown option offered by their pension provider, with very low levels of shopping around. Consumers are making decisions without taking advice. The proportion of drawdown bought without advice has gone from 5% before the freedoms were introduced to over 30% now. And 63% of annuity sales between October 2015 and September 2016 were on a non-advised basis. So let's look at barriers to engagement. There are many barriers, including those identified in the FCA's retirement outcomes paper. As well as a general lack of trust and confidence, members often feel confused, not knowing where to start. They might feel too busy or are put off by the costs associated with financial advice. Increasingly, members are looking to their employer and trustees for support. Recent LV research identified that 72% of members believe that it is the trustees' responsibility to provide information around what their retirement options might be. The obstacles appear to be significant, but the benefits of overcoming them are wide-ranging to the member, the trustee, and employers. So what can you as trustees and employers do to help better engage your members? Whilst we can't hope to place pensions at the top of everybody's agenda or their reading list, we believe there are some simple ways that schemes can engage their members in order to help them achieve better outcomes. Members need to go on a journey over a period of time to help them understand their options and the things that they need to consider. This needs to happen in advance of any regulatory deadlines. So there are 5 simple guidelines to successful engagement. Simplicity, that information should be provided in simple, bite-sized chunks, one message at a time. Relevant to the life stage and the needs of the audience. Delivered in a concise way that can be understood with no jargon. And given in a timely manner, well ahead of any decisions that need to be made. And more importantly, reinforced regularly at various intervals. So as an employer or trustee, there is already a valuable degree of trust between the member and the scheme. So if you provide information, opinion or links to support services, these will be more likely to be viewed as being in the member's best interest, or at the very least, seen as accurate, dependable and reliable. Moving on to education. Having helped your members get to the point where they're ready to engage with their own retirement journey, the next stage of the member journey is to consider how to educate them. Pension freedoms demand informed decision making, so an effective retirement education strategy is key. Through effective retirement education schemes can provide members with the support needed to think about their financial situation, considering their needs in retirement, understanding the risks and also the importance of the decisions that they make. So, I'd like you to consider how many of your schemes currently provide retirement education to scheme members. Referencing recent LV research again, our research has shown that 57% of members believe that it is their trustees' responsibility to provide them with education about retirement. And by this we mean guidance about what options they have and how best to make the use of their pension savings. So how can you better educate your scheme members? The simple answer is that there is no single way to approach this, but there are a number of elements to consider. For example, retirement education should help the member understand their benefits, what options exist and the associated risks. Help them understand the benefits and value of advice and typical processes and costs to help remove those barriers to accessing financial advice. It should also offer information and links to services when provided by a trusted organisation, as mentioned in the engagement section above. It's likely to see far more of the audience accessing and using these. At this stage, it's important that scheme members know that there is no cost, no advice, no commitment, and importantly, no sales. It's impartial guidance and support to help them get the most out of their pension savings and benefits. It's also important to consider the delivery of member education. A good approach involves a mix of media to appeal to different audience types and how they like to receive information. Hard copy communications are the traditional method, and they have an important role to play in the communications mix. The challenge is not to overwhelm the member, as many members see regular printed communications as something to file away for later and not return to. Online information and well-designed scheme portals can enable members to access that information from their workplace, provided they have the internet available to do so. These can also accommodate existing employees and those deferred members who no longer work for the employer. They can provide personalised information to help members understand the types of benefits that they have, what their options are, and the key risks to consider, and where to access more information on that. They can also act as an effective filter, identifying those who are best likely to benefit from advice, or in the case of DB schemes, allow members to understand whether they would be better off staying in the scheme or taking advice on what their flexible retirement options might be. We would also encourage schemes to consider financial education seminars. These can be delivered by education consultants and pop-up pension coaches and can be offered as an added value service to help scheme members understand their finances better. Programs can be tailored and bespoke and delivered in a way that meets the needs of the membership. They can be delivered either in the workplace or online via webinars or video conferencing if the scheme has members spread geographically. Seminars can also be supplemented by one-to-one guidance sessions, either in the workplace or remotely. There are many solutions available in the marketplace today, and at LV we have our own solution called LV Pension Compass. We're going to share with you a brief preview of this now.
Welcome to this preview of LV Pension Compass, a set of online tools which engage and educate DB scheme members on their retirement journey. The scheme member starts their journey at the scheme microsite, which can be branded with your scheme or company logo, and the LV video can also be replaced with your own introductory video. The microsite shows the member their retirement choices and also contains a wealth of information. Next, they log in to the personalized section of Pension Compass. The member starts at the Welcome page, and Pension Compass uses uploaded scheme data to show a summary of their benefits. Pension Compass is then able to clearly show the member the different options available to them should they decide to stay in the scheme or move to an alternative pension arrangement. Pension Compass then guides the member through a budget calculator to establish their essential spending and other outgoings in retirement, as well as any other sources of retirement income. If they are considering a transfer out of scheme, it calculates the risk of running out of money later in life under a range of different scenarios. Having considered their choices, how much income they might need and how long it could last, the member can then view and print out a personal illustration. Once they've completed the Pension Compass journey, the member will have a clear understanding of their options and may decide it's best to remain in their scheme. If they want to explore alternative flexible options, we make it easy for them to contact a financial advisor who will walk them through the advice process and next steps at their own pace.
So that was LV Pension Compass. If anybody would like more information about this or a more detailed demonstration, then please do not hesitate to get in touch with us after the webinar. And finally, moving on to advise. I'd like you to consider whether your scheme currently offers scheme members the opportunity to access professional financial advice. There are many barriers to advice for members, even if it may be the best thing for them. Some LV research showed that 6 in 10 people approaching retirement don't plan on using a financial advisor at all. More than half of those think that they can make the right decision without advice. And there's many reasons for this, but some of the main reasons people cite for not taking advice are primarily the cost, with only 1 in 5 thinking that it presents good value for money. There's also a lack of trust, with 19% we're experiencing this, and also the opinion that they can make the right decisions based on their own research. So what should we do about this? So trustees and employers have traditionally been reluctant to endorse or recommend a particular advice firm and have typically left it to the member to seek their own advice or to make that decision. However, what I'd like to ask you and to challenge you is that position still the right place to be, or should you be better supporting members in accessing financial advice? So at LV we are advocates of advice for retiring members, and in particular for DB members who the requirement is that for transfer values of over 30,000 they must take independent financial advice. We would recommend that schemes make a financial advice facility available to their members approaching and at retirement, and this could be part funded or wholly funded by the sponsor or by the scheme. This presents a good solution, providing that there's proper due diligence carried out on the advisor firm, and of course this must be updated and regularly reviewed. and that the fees that are charged are competitive, and that the members are free to choose another source of advice if they choose. So when considering advice firms, we believe that schemes should consider the following. Does the firm have suitable advice principles? What are those, and are they documented? Affordability. Members are more likely to engage with advice if the scheme is funding it. Capacity, scalability and governance. Trustees should always conduct thorough due diligence when selecting an advice firm. And does the advice address individual needs? A standard solution cannot be suitable for every member, and clear policies for supporting both vulnerable and insistent clients should be clear and in place for the advisor firm. However, we appreciate that not all schemes will be in a position to do this, and in these cases it's important for members to have an understanding of the need for and the significance of financial advice. Members should be assisted and helped to identify reputable financial advisor firms, for example by explaining the financial advice process, what to expect in terms of the process and the likely fees associated with that, and to check whether the advisor holds the relevant and suitable qualifications. LV are an advocate of the Engage, Educate and Advise methodology, helping to create an effective pathway to good member outcomes. We encourage schemes to review their communications to members and to develop these and to have a strategy to improve the frequency, relevance and accuracy of its member communications. Trustees and employers can further help members by providing access to financial education programs through the scheme or the workplace, considering the use of online portals and/or seminar programs. If possible, we actively encourage schemes to facilitate access to financial advice, conducting thorough due diligence on any advice firms. Through providing better access to support and financial guidance and advice, both employers and trustees can be safe in the knowledge that their members will reach good retirement outcomes, and that members will have made these informed decisions under the umbrella of a process that they've established designed to mitigate risk for the member, the trustee and the employer. Thank you, and that now ends today's webinar. I'd now like to open the floor to any questions from the audience.